Hey everybody, welcome back to Gideon Stuff. Welcome back to another random ramble from the truck. Some of you like these, some of you don't. If you don't, why are you watching? But today's ramble is going to be a little bit on survival. And this is really very unplanned. I'm coming back from my evening hike, out doing a little bit of running and hiking, get my cardio in. Actually sitting outside of Walmart right now. But I've been thinking a lot about survival. I've been thinking a lot about survival recently. One of my goals for the channel this year was to make some dedicated like survival videos where the whole point of the video is I go out to the mountains and I film myself building a shelter, doing various, bushcraft, firecraft, foodcraft type of things, stuff like that. And it's something I've wanted to do for the channel for a while, make like how-to videos, how to build certain types of fires, how to tie certain types of knots, how to make certain traps or shelters, things like that. It's something that I've always wanted to do, but it's very, very hard to do and it's very time consuming. But survival, bushcraft, things like that are a huge part of my life. And that's something I enjoy very much, something I'm very passionate about. And over the years, I have snuck a lot of this kind of content into my knife reviews and things like that. For example, my Dimco Free Rein review. It's split into two parts. I'm releasing a unedited full director's cut here pretty soon, so keep an eye out for that. But in that video is a lot of bushcraft skills. I do, make make tent pegs. I do fire sticks, or feather sticks. Do all kinds of stuff in the process of reviewing this knife to show you guys. I love foraging, and in reviews like my video reviewing the Civivi Vision FG, I show you guys how to go out and forage prickly pear, and then I give you guys my I think we made a couple of things in that video. I think we made agua de tuna, or maybe we made tuna de leche. Anyways, we made some dishes using this prickly pear that I'd harvested out in the desert. I've done videos making salsa and all kinds of different stuff, and those are all things that I'm passionate about. They're all things that I like to do. They're all things that I consider to be a big part of my enjoyment of the EDC/knife hobby. But filming that kind of stuff is quite a challenge. It's very time consuming. It takes a lot of editing. It takes a lot of very careful thinking about how to set up a camera. And for me, as just one dude with a phone, it can be a little bit hard, even with my tripods and things like that. And every once in a while, I have some of my friends film me doing stuff. But the other thing too is, if I'm in the middle of a backpacking trip, I'm there to backpack. I will use my knives and my tools, and I'll enjoy using them around the camp for making fires, shelters, food, whatever. But I'm probably not going to film it, right? Which is a shame. So it's something I've always wanted to do, but it's been very challenging. But one of my goals for the channel this year was to do more of that. And unfortunately, I had a trip planned where I wanted to go and build a shelter and live out in the... I wanted to do two. I wanted to do a out in the mountains adventure, building a shelter out in the mountains, getting a fire going, harvesting food out there. And then I wanted to do one in the desert just to kind of show, compare and contrast. But recent fire bans across the country, as well as my own ethical concerns with being a good steward of the land, have made that not seem all that practical. And the other thing too is, I don't make very many fires, to be completely honest. A lot of the time when I'm backpacking, like most of the time when I'm backpacking, no fire at all. I either just eat my food cold, or it's food that doesn't need cooked, or I use a little propane stove, right? So, most of my campfires I make when I'm like camping with friends and stuff. So that's put a little bit of a damper on those plans. And maybe in the fall I can get back into it. Maybe the fire restrictions will be lifted. Maybe we'll get a really heavy monsoon. I don't know. But for right now, that stuff's kind of on the back burner. There are still plenty of other things that I can do that demonstrate survival skills, right? But, I want to do a lot of stuff like, going and catching trout in the Rocky Mountains, frying it up on my campfire outside my wigwam, right? That sounds like a really, really fun video. That's stuff that I enjoy doing. That's stuff that I did a lot when I was a teenager. And it's still stuff that I do every once in a while. I don't do so much shelter building these days. I have done it a couple of times recently, just for fun, but I used to do way more of it as a kid. Those are all things that I'm very, very passionate about, and those are things I want to start making content on eventually. Now, because I've been having all these video ideas, I've been doing all this brainstorming, I've been thinking a lot about survival. I've been revisiting a lot of my own teaching and, a lot of the philosophies that I've heard on bushcraft and survival. I've been reading my Boy Scout handbook again from when I was in Scouts. Been reading through several different survival guides that I have, some books on. I have this really old book. What's it called? Oh my gosh, I'm drawing a brain fart. I'm drawing a blank. Way of the Mountain. Anyways, it's a book basically about like the old time trappers and mountain men and pioneers and some of their techniques for coming west. Really interesting stuff. Something I'm very, very passionate about. And of course, it's something that's a practical skill for me because I do go out in the woods, in the wilderness, the desert, whatever. I do go on extended expeditions out into the middle of nowhere quite frequently. And so having that skill set and that knowledge is not only beneficial, but I think necessary, right? So with all that in mind, I've been thinking a lot about survival, and there's a couple of things that I want to talk about right now. One of the other things that's getting me thinking about survival is I'm actually getting ready to teach a class at the community center for this summer about foraging and desert plants. And I'm not sure if I'm going to do it this year, but I did it last year. I also taught a basic survival course. We did like basic first aid and signaling, navigation, things like that, which we'll come back to. So it's something that I think about a lot. I love foraging. I'm going to be teaching that class. And that's what I think a lot of the thoughts I've been having recently are about, is the difference between survival and what I call thrival. And I made a couple shorts about this while I was hiking today, and I've talked about this a couple times on the channel before, and I always get pushback. And I get pushback from other people that I talk to about this in real life sometimes. But the basic premise is this. There is a massive difference between surviving and thriving. And skills such as foraging and hunting are not really survival skills. They are thrival skills. They can be very, very useful, and they can be important for a survival situation in some situations, but they are very, very low on the list of skills that you should probably master if you want to prepare yourself for a survival situation. I'm going to explain why right here. The first thing is, what is a survival situation? Paul Harrell, rest in peace, actually gave an amazing definition for a survival situation that I have used ever since I heard it several years ago from him. And that is any situation where you spend the night in the wild when you had not intended to. I think that's an amazing definition for a survival situation, because survival situations, they vary greatly in terms of severity and scope. There's a wide range of situations that could be considered survival, but all of them can be solved with the same basic toolbox of skills, right? Let's say that you drive down this old forest road to a hiking trail, you do your hike, you come back, and it starts to rain, and the road washes out, and you cannot drive your car out. Bam, you were planning on being home that night, now you're not going to be. That's a survival situation. That is a survival situation. It might not be that serious. Your car's probably stocked with a lot of stuff, and chances are in the morning you can maybe the road will be dry and you can drive out. Maybe you can walk out after the rain stops and call a tow truck or something. That's not the worst kind of situation ever. That is a survival situation, though. I think a lot of people, when they think of survival situation, it's like, I was in a plane crash, now I'm in the middle of rural Alaska, and how am I going to survive? That's a bad situation right there, but we'll talk about that. But I think most people, like the most common survival situations that most people will run into are things like, my car broke down out in the wilderness, I got lost, or I got injured on a hike. Those three things are the most common scenarios that will put you in a survival situation. And all three of those situations, can have varying degrees of severity and personal risk, right? So, how do you deal with a survival situation? I think a lot of people severely overestimate and at the same time underestimate what you need to do to survive out in the wilderness, okay? When you're in a survival situation, your goal is to get out, okay? That is your goal. You are to get out of that situation. And there's two ways to do this, okay? There's only two ways you get out of a survival situation. That might sound crazy, but that's it. Two ways. Any survival situation, there's only two ways you get out. A self-rescue or an assisted rescue. You either get yourself out or someone comes and rescues you, right? Now, there are appropriate times to use either method. One is not better than the other, but if you're in a situation that calls for one and you choose the other, that can be very, very bad. How do you know what situation calls for what? It comes down to where you are, how you are, and what your skill set is, right? Where you are. Are you somewhere that is excessively remote? Are you somewhere where you have contact with other people? Are you somewhere that you know very well? These are all important factors. If it's a place that you know like the back of your hand, that might be a situation for a self-rescue, depending on how you are. Are you injured? Are you sick? Do you have other people with you? Are they injured? Are they sick? Right? How are you? What's your situation? What's your health status? Skill set, obviously. Are you experienced enough to perform a self-rescue? This is where it gets tricky because oftentimes people do not judge their skills appropriately. Some people get overconfident and they're in a situation where they need to wait for assistance and they try to rescue themselves and they kill themselves. They put themselves in a way worse situation. Other times you have situations where it is entirely within your power to get out of the situation. It is not as bad as you think, but people panic and bad things happen and they die, right? So the third part is where you really, really need to know your skills, okay? And if you follow the advice I'm about to give, you're probably gonna have a pretty good shot at surviving a survival situation. Okay, so we've talked about what a survival situation is, how to get out of it. Now let's talk about what to do when you're put in that survival situation. And this is where I think a lot of people have misconceptions about survival. There is an argument I had in the comment section of a video one time, one of my videos, and it's something that I have seen arguments on in other comment sections all over the place. I should never engage in this argument. I did for way too long, years ago, but it's the argument of what is a better survival tool, a knife or a gun? To me, the answer is unequivocally always a knife. Always. Why? Because in a survival situation, the best thing that gun can do for you is make a loud noise and signal. A lot of people think that if you're in a survival situation, you're going to have to go feral and you're going to be hunting animals and foraging for food and blah, blah, blah. That stuff comes last. Dead last. For a couple of reasons. It's not just, and it's not like insignificant reasons either. Very important reasons. Okay? Number one, your body can go a long time without food. Okay? A long time. A lot longer than you think. It's not something that you need to worry about immediately. Number two, remember, you want to get out of a survival situation as quickly as possible. So if you are in the wild, if you are stranded somewhere long enough that you need to start obtaining food, you've probably already fucked up. You've probably already done several things wrong up to this point. Okay? And the third thing is energy expenditure. You do not want to waste energy when you're in a survival situation. Oh, I'm going to replenish it by, eating. Are you? Let's say you burn through hundreds of calories chasing a rabbit through the woods trying to hunt it down and eat it, and you don't get it. Well, you just waste a bunch of calories and you're not replenishing them, right? Plus, let's say that you do bring down an animal. Now you've got to spend the time taking it apart, breaking it down, cooking it. These are all things that waste energy, okay? So, foraging, hunting, these are great skills to have, and I'll talk about some situations where they are valid survival tools, but for the vast majority of situations, food is probably the last thing you want to think about, okay? What are the first things you want to think about? There are a bunch of different schools of survival and stuff that talk about, the order of operations for a survival situation, and most of them start with find shelter. I agree with this. This is very good, right? This is good advice, but I don't like to call it finding shelter. I like to call it protecting yourself from exposure or protecting yourself from the elements. This is the number one step, and this is a step that starts before you leave your house. This is a step that starts before you end up in a survival situation. It starts with your clothing. Make sure you have the appropriate clothing for your climate, environment, topography, wherever you're going. Make sure you're dressed appropriately. Make sure you've got extra socks. Make sure you've got a little jacket or something, right? Exposure will kill you faster than anything else. If you get too hot or too cold, that is what's going to do you in. Okay, that's what's gonna be game over. You can mitigate that a lot by just dressing right. Okay, now that's shocking to a lot of people. When I say, finding shelter starts with your clothes, that shocks a lot of people. But it is. I'm going to tell you right now, that is the best and simplest survival advice ever. Make sure you're dressed right. Make sure you're dressed right, okay? Then, what does finding shelter look like? It doesn't have to be building a lean-to, right? That could definitely be part of it, and that could be a necessary step. But finding shelter could be something as simple as crawling under a rock or a bush for shade, right? Could be that simple. Something to get you out of the heat of the sun. That is finding shelter. That is the kind of stuff that you need to take as your very first step when you realize you're in a survival situation, okay? Slow down, get calm, and assess your shelter, right? Okay, is there a storm moving in? Maybe I need to put on my windbreaker. Oh gosh, it's 4 p.m., the sun is at its zenith, it's, 106 degrees out here. Let me find some shade, and then we can sort things out. Shelter, number one most important thing. Number two most important thing, and this is like neck and neck with shelter, is signaling / navigation. These two tools will get you out of most survival situations. Okay? So signaling / navigation. This is where you decide, okay, you've got shelter, you're safe. If it's raining, don't get down in an arroyo, right? You don't want to get flash flooded. You made sure that you're in a safe place. You're ready for your next step. What's that next step? Okay, am I going to do a self-rescue or am I going to wait for an assist? Okay, self-rescue. Do you know where you are? If you've gotten lost, this is the time where you sit down, you pull out your map, and you try to navigate, try to triangulate, figure out where you are. You should do this anyways, whether you're going to do a self-rescue or not, I should clarify, because you need to know where you are so that you can maybe help search parties get to you, right? If you're good at navigating, if you know the terrain, you can maybe take a break, readjust, and then find your way back, okay? Know how to navigate, right? Know how to navigate. Have a map with you. Have a map with you. Know how to use it, know how to read it. Another thing that I generally give as advice, especially to people out here in the desert, if they get stranded or if they get lost, find an arroyo and follow it downhill. Let's say that you're in a situation where you don't have navigation, you don't have a way to call for help, blah, blah, blah. Okay, yikes, maybe you have to perform a self-rescue, like you have no choice. Find an arroyo and follow it downstream. And here's why. All the arroyos here lead to the river. The river leads to civilization every single time. The other thing is if you follow the arroyo, If you're out here in the desert, you have more opportunity to find shade. You have more opportunities to find water if you need to. Great stuff, right? There you go. Signaling and navigation is another thing that starts before you get into a survival situation. Make sure you have a way to contact people, like a little Garmin or something to like mark your location, or make sure that you know where you're going. Other people know where you're going. You have a map. You know how to use it. You know the trails. You've studied up on it. This is the kind of stuff that you do it before you get into the situation, so that when you end up in that situation, you're automatically falling back on this kind of stuff. Okay? Signaling can be anything from, oh, I made a phone call to my mom, to, okay, I'm building a fire to send signals to airplanes, right? There's a wide variety of signaling. Signaling can also be something that starts with clothing, right? Wear bright colored clothing, or bring some with you. I always have a bright orange bandana in my bag so I can tie it to trees or on a pole and wave around, things like that. Having bright colored clothing is very, very helpful. These are all great things to have before you get into a survival situation. Now, let's talk about water, because you will need water before food, right? And maybe if it's taking people a long time to find you, you might get to the point where you need water. Maybe you're injured, you need water. Finding water is an important skill to know how to have. I think being able to find water is way more important than knowing edible plants. It's way more important than being able to hunt a rabbit or build a trap, right? That's important stuff. But once again, if you are in a situation where you're out hiking and you get injured, or you get lost, or your car breaks down, you should have adequate water with you, okay? Let's think of a scenario here. Let's say that I'm out walking through the desert and I break my leg. I take a fall, I take a bad step, I break my leg, okay? What do? Number one thing, find shelter. Number one thing. Let's presume I'm already dressed appropriately. I'm going to try to crawl under a bush and get out of the sun. Next thing I'm probably going to do is attend to my leg, my broken leg. I'm probably going to try and splint that up if I can. If not, I could just sit there and suffer. That is honestly a viable option, right? What I could probably do is find shelter and then try to start signaling for help, right? Because I have a broken leg, I'm not performing a self-rescue. It's just not happening, right? So I crawl into this bush, and let's say, I've got my Garmin. Okay, boop, 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 boop. I send an SOS. Okay, now I wait. Well, luckily I had a backpack full of stuff, so I've got water, I've got some granola bars or something in there. Okay, here I am in my shade, waiting for rescue to come, rationing my water, rationing my food. I can wait there because now I found a shady place. Let's say I'm under a rock, I'm up against a cliff under a rock, I'm under a nice little tree. All right, I found shelter from the sun. I'm dressed appropriately. I'm not going to get sunburned, not going to get too hot. I've got my little water. I can wait there for help for hours to days, okay? Now, eventually I might have to deal with my leg, and first aid is a whole other situation that I'll make other videos about, but that's the general idea of a survival situation, right? Now, if I had to perform a self-rescue, let's say my communication wasn't working, let's say that I just decided I need to perform a self-rescue. Obviously, I splint up my leg first and then try and drag/hollow myself down the mountain, but that's another topic. Survival can be very complex, right? There's a lot of factors to consider. You're not going to be able to consider all of them beforehand. Things will go wrong that you cannot predict. But by and large, I think that if you stick to learning shelter or protecting yourself from exposure and signaling/navigation, those two tools will get you out of most survival situations before you ever have to start hunting elk, right? Make sure people know where you are. Make sure you can call for help. Make sure you can set up smoke signals, something like that. There you go. Make sure you're dressed right. Make sure you can get out of the heat. Make sure you can get out of the cold. Okay. So, water. Again, something that is probably going to be, it's going to be something that you need before food, but it might not be something that you need immediately. Always have water with you. Always, right? Now, again, there are going to be situations where things go wrong. And maybe you are in a situation where you don't have any water and you're stranded in the desert, and help is taking way too long to get there. Okay, now you need to know how to harvest good hydration from cacti and things like that. Those are good tools to have, but they should not be immediately where your mind goes. When you realize you're in a survival situation, when you realize you're in a bad spot, sit down, calm down, make sure you're protected from exposure, protected from the elements. See if you can call for help. See if you can navigate your way out of there. Unlose yourself, right? That's where you want to go first. So, what are some situations where, yeah, you might have to hunt or forage? They're going to be pretty rare, to be completely honest, right? When I was a kid, one of my favorite books was Hatchet by Gary Paulson. In fact, Hatchet was not actually my favorite. Brian's Winter was my favorite. So for those of you that don't know, Hatchet is a story of a young boy who is in a plane crash in the wilds of Canada and ends up having to survive for an extended period of time out there using nothing but a hatchet that he salvages from the wreckage. It's a great book. It's a classic. I love it. I still read it at least once a year. But then there's a sequel called Brian's Winter, which is an alternate timeline where Brian does not get rescued before winter. In the original novel, spoilers, I guess, in the original novel, he gets rescued before the snows hit. In this sequel, he doesn't, and he has to survive through the winter, and all kinds of stuff goes wrong. He gets attacked by a crazed moose and injured very badly, and snow and cold is something new that he has to deal with. It's a very thrilling series, and there's a couple other sequels too. Brian's Hunt and some other ones focused around this character, but something like that, like if you are a bush pilot flying a small little Cessna and you crash in the wilds of Alaska in the middle of winter, it's a pretty bad situation, and all your communication, all your locating devices, you just lost all communication. That's a bad situation. It's a very, very bad situation. I would say it's probably a fairly rare situation, but that's a situation where, yeah, maybe hunting, foraging becomes a little bit more important, right? The other thing I want to say about hunting is, remember what I was saying about like energy conservation, making sure you're being efficient with things? You should not try to be bringing down like moose and elk as your first prey item for a survival situation. Again, maybe if you're out there for months, that's going to be something that has to happen, but start small. Squirrels, rabbits, lizards, snakes, birds, these are things that are going to be easier to deal with, right? You can build traps to catch them. That's very energy efficient. You can bring them down with sticks and stones, and then cooking them is very easy. Breaking them down is even easier. You know, with a rabbit, you just make some cuts on the legs or rip the skin off, pull the guts out, you're done. Breaking down an elk or a moose takes a lot of time, a lot of energy. It's just wasteful, right? You're not going to win that game in the long run. Hunting elk and things, those are a thrival skill, right? If you are in one of the rare survival situations where you do have to hunt, rabbits and squirrels, small mammals, reptiles, and birds are going to be your main targets, right? Going back to the gun versus a knife for survival. Okay, you have a gun. Let's say that, let's go back to my situation, my hypothetical situation where I break my leg out in the desert. Okay, all I have with me is a gun. I can fire a shot in the air to let people know where I'm at. I can fire a couple shots in the air. That's about the best thing I can do with that gun in that situation. Maybe I can use it as a crutch or to splint my leg. But a knife is excellent. And one of the reasons why I love survival knives so much is that they are great at shelter. They're great at building you shelter, right? If you're stranded somewhere where it's very, very snowy, you should probably want to find somewhere where you can get a roof over your head. Maybe dig a snow cave. Sometimes those can be a little bit, iffy. chop some sticks, build a little lean-to, something like that. You know, don't waste too much energy. Building shelter can waste a lot of energy, but one of the easiest ways to protect yourself from exposure is to build a fire. That's a great skill. That's something that a knife can help you with. Absolutely. And that's why I think survival knives are such good, versatile tools. Yeah. So, what else do I want to rant about? This is going to be... I hope some of you guys enjoy this video. I do want to talk about wild animals, actually. I think a lot of people really, really overestimate how much of a threat wild animals are. Okay? I'm going to tell you a couple stories. I took some friends of mine hiking not so long, well, about a year ago. And one of my buddies, he just got a new pistol. So he brought on this hike with us. It was a new Canic. And my buddies are not really hiking people. So, you know, this was kind of me breaking them in. And as we're on this hike out to the desert, I see a rattlesnake just off the trail under an agave. I'm like, oh, guys, look, there's a rattlesnake. And he's coiled up. He's not rattling or anything. He's just kind of staring at us. You know, it's a little bit too hot for him. He's sitting in the shade. Bam, 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 bam. My buddy pulls that gun and shoots that snake to pieces. I turn, I'm like, what the hell was that? He's like, oh, and he's like, man, I got it, guys, I got it. And he's like so proud, like expecting a pat on the back. I'm like, why did you do that? He's like, well, it was a rattlesnake. It offered no threat to us. No threat whatsoever. It was just sitting there. We're encroaching on its territory. We're ruining its day, and then you just go and fucking kill it? It pissed me off. He thought rattlesnake equals bad. See rattlesnake, must die. Right? I've talked to other people. I have this buddy that I visit with, and I show him pictures and stuff from my backpacking trips and whatever. And the other day, I show him a picture of a bear that I ran into, and he's like, oh man, did you shoot it? No, I didn't shoot it. He's like, oh man, if I saw a bear, man, I'm shooting first and asking questions later. But why? Why? Pull out your gun, you start shooting. Let's say you injure it or straight up miss. Now bear's mad. It's definitely going to attack you, or maybe run off. Like, I don't know, but like, you know, you're maybe making the situation worse. Every time I've run into a bear in the wild, I back away, keep eye contact on the bear, and I go a different way. We've never had any problems, right? Yell at them, throw sticks at them if they get aggressive. But if they're just there and you see them, remove yourself from the situation, okay? You do not have to engage. You do not have to engage. I think I've told the story before. I normally go hiking with a .22 pistol. That's it. I'll go backpacking with nothing but .22 pistol. The main reason is making loud noise for signaling, but also for scaring animals. I've only pulled it in defense against an animal once, and that was against a mountain lion. I was walking through an arroyo, and it was ahead of me and up on a boulder or up on a little mound, and it growled at me. I saw it. It was there hunkered down. I pulled a pistol, fired a shot in the air, and it ran off. Right? Do not engage with wild animals unless they engage with you first. Now, I'm not saying that bears and cougars aren't dangerous. They are. They absolutely are. They will fuck you up. If a cougar jumps you from behind, yeah, you gotta fight for your life, obviously, right? And they might do that. But don't go picking fights that aren't there, right? Think about all the people that get gored and trampled by bison in Yellowstone. Every single one of those cases that I know of is because some dipshit decided to start a fight that wasn't a fight. They went and messed with the big horned woolly animal, right? Don't do that, okay? Don't do that. Be smart, all right? Just be smart. Animals are not out there to get you, for the most part, right? Again, there's exceptions, as always. Stay vigilant, but don't go picking fights where none exist, okay? That's just something I want to get off my shoulder, because I really hate how some people think about animals and just treat them as monsters. But that's probably going to be it for this video. This has been a long one. I'm going to share some more stories. We'll have plenty of time for that. I'm going to make more videos on this topic in the future, but I really do just want to stress that I do think that the most important skills for survival, the two things that are going to get you out of most situations, are protecting yourself from the elements and being able to signal/navigate. Those are the most important skills for survival. I didn't show any knives in this video, so let's go ahead and show a knife. Today I've been carrying the Mora Amberg. Very cool knife. I'm really enjoying it. That's a good one. More of a like foraging, hunting type of knife than a survival knife, but it's a very good one. But anyways, that's it for today's video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Big shout out to my channel members at the Cowboy level. I appreciate everything you do for the channel. If you want to become a member and support me directly, there's a link down below. As for the rest of you hooligans, if you enjoyed the video, leave a like, comment below, and subscribe. I've been Gideon, and I'll see you in the next one. Adios.